Well, that's a wrap here from IHIF Asia in Hong Kong at the Regent Hotel. And it's been an incredible second year for IHIF Asia. 520 delegates from 33 countries. And as this is a deal-making conference, we had 210 investors, which is 41% of the total audience, which is an incredibly powerful mix of capital from different markets, different areas. And the content was frankly very powerful as well. 104 speakers.
104 speakers, a significant growth at that. Thanks, Alexei. That was very well summarized. And quick to add, assets under management has grown from $210 billion from last year to $280 billion.
Indeed. Yeah, so, given that growth in terms of capital, its diversity, the markets that it's coming from, but to your point, the $280 billion of hotel assets under management, that's a lot of hotel assets that our delegation is managing and owning. But there was also new capital in the room. Where did that capital come from, IB?
So the dynamics, what we have seen this year is quite interesting, Alexei. We have seen new investment groups coming from the family offices all the way up to any interfaces between even bilateral and multilateral institutions which are funding this event. Especially the growth we have seen is coming from Japan and China. I can name a few, Delonix, Huama Holdings, Jinjiang from China, Fortress Group, with a cap of $2.5 billion, at least from Fortress Group, and major real estate developers which are also investing quite heavily in the region are coming for the first time.
Yeah, and those are the funds, the classic funds, also joined by a lot of the classic PE, Blackstone, BlackRock, Brookfield, and many others. A lot of investment banks.
Goldman Sachs was one of them.
Indeed, Bain Capital as well. So a lot of powerful names. But then a lot of family office, right? I mean, Asia is a market that is very much powered by family office capital. With longer life cycle holds on those assets. And so a lot of owner operators, right, that bring a really interesting perspective to the market. They bring both the OpCo expertise as well as the PropCo expertise. So a lot of content focused on how to properly manage these hotels.
Absolutely, and we were very ably supported by a lot of partnerships which we have built across this year. The content actually over the last 3 days, as Alexei was mentioning, was super packed, entertaining, very clearly designed to kind of give the latest trends, not only the trends, the statistics, and where the markets are emerging from for investment sake. Over the last 3 days, Alexei, we have had at least 45 sessions which were talking across multiple assets of capital growth and deal making. Especially on day 2, it was a packed activity with a lot of breakout sessions talking entirely on deal making and capital.
Indeed. So talking about some of those sessions, IB, we had a lot of sessions, 104 speakers from 33 different countries. So a lot of perspectives, a lot of different knowledge being brought here to IHIF Asia. What were some of the sessions that stood out for you?
We were talking about sustainability to start with, and we were also talking about the technology's role, but most importantly, we were talking about how third-party operators are, bringing a new focus to how properties assets are being managed and maintained in Asia, with the best practices flowing over from Europe and US. So that was one, I would say. And we were also talking about how to manage capital expenditure when the project costs are going up in places like South Korea and Japan. Yeah. There is a clear lesson for the rest of Asia to kind of maximize or optimize their inputs there as well. So I would, if you ask me to highlight a couple of sessions, this was it.
Yeah, indeed. And, really reflecting also much of the interest in branded resi that we've seen at both IHIF EMEA in Berlin earlier this year, as well as at NYU IHIF in New York in June. The branded resi session was incredibly popular. It was standing room only. We had developers, investors, as well as operators in there, really trying to unlock the value that the branded resi brings to the development part of the cycle in terms of raising capital for construction and for the project to be penciled out. But there's a lot of hybrid models also coming into the market. And that's, again, I think that's partly a reflection of the diversity of Asia, but it's also a reflection of the diversity of operators in the region. So we had folks that are coming out with solutions to solve the the epidemic of loneliness for senior living, and bringing in a concept that frankly is a hybrid model between residential and hospitality, but really then taps into this demographic issue that we see worldwide of an aging population that is lonely and perhaps living in a place that is beyond their means or beyond their needs. Yeah. And it's this real true mix of hospitality, operational knowledge with frankly meeting a customer demand and a trend, and that was very popular as well. I love that alternative accommodations session. But then we had a lot of content focused on all of the different markets within Asia. And a big topic and top of mind for, frankly, everybody here at IHIF Asia has clearly been Japan. A large delegation from Japan. We had an advisory board meeting in Tokyo. Yeah. So clearly, I mean, what's been your impression of the Japanese power in terms of its development and its popularity with foreign markets?
Excellent. That's a great point to raise, Alexei. Japan has been a puzzle solved, I wouldn't say, but a long way to go. But it's a market brimming with potential. As everyone knows, it's a fast aging economy and very stable, up and middle GDP size, still the third largest economy in the world. But there is capital which needs to be utilized, and they are actually looking for new markets. And that's exactly the reason why IHIF Asia 1 to 2, we have seen a huge participation interest coming from Japan, which is also attracting other partners to come and take note of Japan's participation. Indeed. I would say, like Alexei was mentioning, the breakout session was brimming, and we had major investors, Fortress Group, and major developers like Takenaka Corporation, and major real estate developers and owners like Mitsubishi Realty, plus Indochina Kajima and Mitsui. They were all taking part in the same group of discussion, which I think are the four largest developers out of the 5. Yeah. So that interest is picking and kind of being noticed by the rest of Asia Pacific.
Yeah, and the Japanese story is both inbound and outbound. We've had Cebu Prince Hotels for the second time in a year, in our second year, again sponsoring and partnering with us. And they've got an incredible story. I mean, they are on an expansion plan, currently, going to 250 hotels, 150 of those outside of Japan. And what's also pretty interesting about Cebu Prince is they just announced, obviously, the acquisition of Ace Hotels, which yesterday the president announced that he actually met with Ace Hotels here at IHIF Asia last year, where they started talking about that deal. Is that right?
Absolutely. Thrilled to hear that particular news from the president of
Yoshiki Kaneda.
Yoshiki Kaneda-san. And he was at this very news desk talking about the future plans across IHIF Asia, not only in Asia, through our Berlin and New York shows as well. And very thrilled about expansion plans going across and then making it a possibility across IHIF portfolio.
Yeah, indeed. So a lot of focus on Japan, a lot of excitement, of capital coming into Japan, but also some of those Japanese classic platforms going outbound as well. But other markets, right? What were some of the other markets that we were focused on?
We are trying to kind of build stronger partnerships in markets like China and India, Vietnam, and Cambodia. Because these are emerging markets, or mid-level emerging markets where the price structure is changing. Some consolidation is happening by way of overseas acquisitions in markets like India. For example, I can give you how active these markets are. From just 3 partnerships across the entire Asia Pacific last year, IHIF Asia year 2 has kind of struck 11 partnerships across these countries. Tells you very clearly where the interest is, where the money is flowing. And I can also quickly add, India is very willing to kind of work with us next year, and Japan has shown interest. And most importantly, Alexei, China Chamber of Tourism is an active partner working with us right now for 2026 and beyond.
Yes, we signed a strategic agreement with the China Hotel Lodging Association yesterday.
Exactly.
Yeah, which underpins, again, the diversity of the event and the capital. One of the interesting things as well that I thought from a content perspective was that the capital profile in Asia typically takes a longer investment hold, right? So it's longer capital, looking at hotel assets as a long-term hold and a securitized asset for net operating income and returns on investment, and that then really emphasizes the life cycle management of a hotel and how do you asset manage that. So we had a lot of content focused on sweating the asset. Which is really the interesting part of our industry, right? Is not just the real estate component in the capital markets, but it's how do you operate these very complex, very interesting buildings that contain a brand, a customer, a guest, changing trends, and with all of that excitement, obviously comes a complexity. And there are challenges and there are headwinds in the market. We spoke to Steve Carroll yesterday around how are investors, seeing that and how are they penciling those challenges of labor. Continues to be a challenge, both in the terms of its availability, its training, skill set, but most certainly its cost. But also, the cost of supplies. Inflation is still an issue. Supply chains and trade and tariffs are still out there in the macro economies. So it's becoming increasingly more challenging and complex to run these hotels and run them more profitably as those costs go up. And lifestyle and luxury has been certainly one of the focused segments in the market. But that's where you're starting to see an increase of that mid-scale select service, extended stay, and some of those hybrid models that we discussed come into the market because they are operating platforms on lower foundations of labor. Yeah. So less employees required for a select service for that matter. So you're starting to see some of those concepts come in the different chain scales, as well as the hybrids to solve that problem.
Absolutely. And as Alex was mentioning, asset management and the life cycle management of these assets is an important discussion which is picking up of late. We at IHIF are absolutely aware of these pockets of excellence which is happening in Asia Pacific. One country is unlike the other, and we know where labor is cheaper, assets are expected to perform longer than other parts of the world, other parts of Asia Pacific even, and there is demand mix, supply mix, which is changing from country to country. We are completely aware of it, and that's exactly what we are trying to do when we have struck a partnership with HAMA. From 6 global chapters and representing all the continents. We are here to kind of share the best practices, and that's exactly what we plan to do.
Yeah. So what an incredible 3 days it's been, right? We've gone over the audience, we've gone over the number of speakers, the diversity of capital, the different operating models. We've had truly the privilege and the pleasure of receiving what is truly Asian hospitality in all of its gracefulness and all of its authenticity. This is a region that is dynamic, it's diverse, it's growing, and it is really supporting itself through intra-Asian demand, which is growing. And yet, in many markets, that growth hasn't even gotten back to pre-COVID levels. So you're still seeing a lot of gas in the tank on both the tourism demand side, MICE, meetings, groups, corporate, but also, frankly, in the capital. The capital is still out there. There's a lot of dry powder that is unlocking, looking at this market and looking at this region, and absolutely looking to deploy to take advantage of all of those structural, fundamental shifts and advantages that Asia has. So looking forward to being back here next year. And speaking of which, when are the dates for 2026?
Absolutely, Alexi. So we are in a fun ride, and we are going to continue the ride. Run never stops. So it's going to be 16th to 18th September 2026. I am very happy to announce that third year of this event will also return to this iconic venue of Regent.
Yeah, thank you, IB, and we'll see you September 16th to the 18th.
Thank you so much. Hope to see you, everyone.